When I think of memorable games from my childhood, lots of stuff comes up. Mario, Zelda, and Sonic to name a few, but another game series that stole my heart was Streets of Rage. It was my first introduction to the beat-em-up style game, and it was awesome. But after the awesome that was the original 2 and 3, okay, 3 is debatable, but shut up, a question was raised. Where's Streets of Rage 4? Well, we almost got that game. Multiple times, in fact, which all ended with a very sad conclusion. So, very sad in so many ways. So, today on Gaming Mysteries, I'll be talking about Streets of Rage 4. Now, the first attempts at a new Streets of Rage game came with the Sega Saturn. This decision to move to a 32-bit console was a smart one, seeing as how they couldn't go any further with 16-bit hardware. But rather than try to develop the game in-house, they instead tried to purchase a half-completed game called Judgment Force from Core Design, and turn it into a game that would be called Streets of Rage 3D. The game would feature all new characters, seemingly based off of the original designs from the first games, and it was meant to be the 3D continuation of the Streets of Rage franchise. However, Sega ended up pulling out of the deal and it ended up being dropped at the last minute, though the game was later released under the title Fighting Force for the PS1, N64, and PC. Another attempt at Streets of Rage 4 came with a game called Die Hard Arcade. It was a game that was basically a 3D-style Streets of Rage type game that was released in arcades and later converted to the Sega Saturn. How does this relate to Streets of Rage? Well, it's rumored that at one stage of development, it was Streets of Rage 4. So, there's your connection. Many have said that Die Hard Arcade would have made a pretty good Streets of Rage 4, but of course, that didn't happen. Here's where we get to the sad part. Years later, after the release of the Dreamcast, Ancient, now known as Overworks, and Sega started work on an early concept of Streets of Rage 4. An early playable section was produced and showed the game, in all its true 3D glory. The game, based off of these early tech demos, was to be in full 3D as well as feature a first-person mode. Not sure how that would have went, but I'm intrigued. So what happened, you may be thinking? Well, executives from Sega of America who were completely unaware of the series' history and fan base shot down the idea based on its genre alone. Now, let's take a moment to get pissy about how Sega executives were unaware of a popular Sega franchise. Let's just mull this over a little. Good. Okay, we're done. From their perspective, it was just a bad idea. Side-scrolling beat-em-up style games had lost a lot of momentum in the mid-90s, and attempts to bring the genre into 3D weren't very successful, so they figured that it would be a bad idea to make a game that they thought wouldn't sell, which makes sense, but I'd like to think people would buy a new Streets of Rage. You know? Please? But that's Streets of Rage 4. Well, these weren't the only attempts to revive the series, as there were talks to make a new Streets of Rage for the original Xbox, as well as talks to produce a game under the title Streets of Rage Online, presumably for the 360 and PS3. Nothing came from either of these projects, and nothing has since. Lots of people, myself included, hope that someday we do finally see a new installment. Sega themselves haven't ruled it out, and if life has taught me anything, it's that anything's possible. So, here's hoping. This has been Gaming Mysteries. Thanks for watching.